everyone, and welcome to today's Seed World Innovation Series webinar. My name is Alex Martin, and I serve as an associate editor for Seed World. And today, I'm happy to be your host. Today's theme is yes to seed treatment, but what about microplastics? I'd like to take a minute to thank Incotec for partnering with us on this Innovation Series webinar. Presenting the webinar today is Pronk and Marta Dobrowolska. Our first speaker of the day will be Pronk. Rob is the Global Marketing Manager for Incotec. With a background in biochemistry, Rob worked in the pharmaceutical industry before joining Incotec 10 years ago, where he has managed the Analytical Services Department before leading the Marketing Department as Global Marketing Manager. Rob has been a member of the ISF Seed Applied Technology Committee for about 3 years now. Our second speaker of the day is Marta Dobrowolska. Marta is the Research and Technology Manager for Incotec. She obtained her doctor's degree at the Faculty of Applied Sciences at Delft University of Technology and a master's degree in chemistry at the University of Warsaw. Amongst others, Marta is responsible for open innovation collaborations with external parties like universities and research institutions, and is part of the Royal Chemical Society. Now, during the presentation, you're likely going to have some questions for both of our speakers. Please type these into the chat box at any time during the webinar, and we're going to address those in the Q&A session we'll hold after they finish their presentation. Also, we're going to have a few poll questions for you throughout the presentation, and these will pop up in your chat box for you to answer. We'd also like to let you know that today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available at seedworld.com in the coming days. We'll also be sending you an email with a link to the webinar. Microplastics are raising a huge amount of interest. All around the globe, there is a growing concern, and this concern is present both in the scientific community as well as in the lay press. This webinar will be about a recently evolved topic, microplastics and seed. Rob and Marta will give you a comprehensive update of what is coming our way. What is a microplastic and what is not? What is the impact for the seed industry? And what are some possible solutions? And with that, Rob, I'm going to let you take it away. So go ahead and take it away from here.
All right. Thank you very much, Alex. Hi, everybody. Well, let me first start to explain you a bit about what Incotec is about. As you can read, Incotec is the seed enhancement company, independent from any seed-related company or chemical company providing active ingredients like plant protection products. And we provide services to the whole seed industry. Our purpose is to contribute to feeding the world by getting the utmost out of seed. Incotec have about 400 employees. We work globally, yet we will develop local solutions, and we perform seed treatment services in 10 different countries. And from these 10 countries located on all continents, we can basically serve any country in the globe. We focus both on vegetable seeds as well as field crops, also named row crops. And we've been around for over 50 years, and since 5 years now, we're part of Croda. Well, after this introduction, let's go to the focus of this presentation, which is seed treatment. Seed treatment has been used and developed over the last few decades and has proven to be very beneficial as well as sustainable. There are a great number of arguments to support the use of seed treatment as a safe and effective method to apply plant protection products onto the seed, and we will elaborate further on this later in this presentation. Yet, most seed treatment film coats contain a synthetic polymer, and this polymer is mostly considered a microplastics. And microplastics are a hot topic nowadays. To provide you a bit more background on microplastics, currently Microplastics are raising a huge amount of interest. All around the globe, there is growing concern about microplastics. And this concern is present both in the scientific community as well as in the lay press. In this slide, you will see some scientific and regulatory reports. And if I pull up the next graph, you will see the number of scientific articles which have been published around microplastics over the last few years. This number has increased enormously. And as I indicated, not only in the scientific community, but also in the lay press, there's a lot of attention around microplastics. Mind you, very often the issues around plastic litter are confused with the issue around microplastics. Although they are different, actually, that doesn't even matter. Microplastics strengthen each other in people's minds, both for the general public and often even for policymakers. It's simply more of the same issue. Plastics are a problem. Well, what's the poll number one is, what's the biggest contributor to microplastic in the environment? And as you can see, there are 5 different answers: car tires, agricultural products, washing clothes, plastic pallets, and cosmetics. And I'd like you to have a try at what you think is the biggest contributor to plastics in the environment. So actually what you're looking at, this is the result. You see that half of the microplastic release is from car tire wear. Another big chunk comes from the production of plastic pallets, which are used to make any type of plastic product. Furthermore, washing of clothes as well as the total agriculture activity account each for about 10% of the microplastic release. Next, there are contributors like sanitation products, cosmetics, paints, road markings, and synthetic soccer fields. Now, in the next slide, you see that seed treatment is part of the total agricultural release of microplastics. The vast majority of microplastic release comes from controlled release fertilizers. All seed treatment products together, which means all film coat products plus controlled release pesticides, contribute actually less than 1% of total microplastic release. So, although seed treatment is only a small portion of the contribution of microplastics, also our industry will have to play our part to reduce the environmental impact. There are currently already restrictions on certain products in which you might not even have expected they would have contained microplastics. Think of toothpaste, scrubs, of course, rinse-off cosmetics, and shower creams. In most of these products, legislation has been put into place which forbids the addition of microplastics. This legislation is active in several US states and in several European countries. And in many cases, the microplastics have been replaced by other products like cellulose microbeads or even ground coffee. What is the issue with microplastics in seed treatment? Well, before we're going to discuss the restriction, I would like to share with you why there is a concern around microplastics. Actually, it's a combination of a few factors. Firstly, researchers have seen that microplastics are toxic at certain concentrations, meaning that microscopic marine life will experience challenges growing normally. Secondly, there is persistence in the environment of microplastics due to the resistance of microplastics to biodegradation. And thirdly, there is, at least currently, no realistically viable potential to get rid of microplastics once they are in the environment. So essentially, the concentration of microplastics will continue to increase over time. So I've got a next poll question for you, which is, at the current rate of release, when may we see the first eco-toxicological signs of microplastic in our environment? So I see a lot of different answer. Most people think actually it's already now. Well, for those people, I've got a fair amount of good news. Actually, I'll end the poll. Vast majority says already now. Actually, in this slide, you'll see a lot of information, and I'll get to the answer really quickly. Let me explain this graph step by step. The vertical axis states the amount of microplastic, in this case, the amount of microplastic on the beach, and the horizontal axis states the year. It's running from 1940 till 2100, with 2020 exactly in the middle. The thick curve depicts the concentration of microplastics on the beach over the years. And there's a tiny arrow where we are at currently. At the right-hand side of the tiny arrow, you see the predicted concentrations based on the current levels of release. It's clearly seen that the amount of microplastics has risen over the last decades, and it is certain that it will continue to rise during the coming years. As long as the concentration remains in the green zone, there are no negative effects expected. Yet, once the concentration of microplastics hits the red zone, scientists predict that there will be negative effects on marine life, especially zooplankton. So, already in 2050, we might see, with the existing speed of release, potentially negative effects. Now, some part of the audience may think that anything happening after 2050 may not be too problematic for them. And while this may be true, it will be affecting our children and our children's children. And it is to those to whom we have a responsibility. This specific graph is about the concentration on the beach. Similar graphs are there for the seabed and the seawater itself. In those ocean compartments, negative effects also will be seen, although the timing of those will be later, but also from 2100 onwards.
Thank you, Rob. So let me tell you right now about when will this be relevant. But first, let's start with the poll question. Which region will be affected first by the microplastic regulation, do you think? Please vote now. North America and Europe, Asia, global, but we see Europe. Most of the people say Europe. Yes, that's about right. I'll end the poll now. So indeed, first regulation on microplastic we can see in Europe very, very soon. It all comes from the European Parliament plastic strategy that has been developed for the first time ever Europe-wide in January 2018, as the part of the transition towards more circular economy. There are three main parts of that strategy. First, all plastic packaging on the European market has to be recyclable by 2030. Second, the single-use plastic will be reduced. And third, the intentional use of microplastic will be restricted. And as part of this initiative, the third point, European Chemical Agency has been asked to prepare a restriction proposal for the intentionally added microplastics. Now I would like to start another poll. Could you please tell me when can we expect the restriction to be introduced? Right, I see a lot of people saying 2021, 2022. Indeed, you might all be right. Since at the moment, we know that ECHA is working on the proposal for the restriction. Across last year, there has been held public consultation, which has been closed in September, with more than 400 individual comments. And until June this year, ECHA will have time to consolidate all the opinions on the economics, but also on the risk assessment, and can prepare the restriction. For that, we expect that somewhere in the middle of 2021, we can expect the entry into force of that restriction, if it will be adopted. What does it mean for our industry and also for other industries? We can see that if the entry into force will happen in 2021, at this moment, the proposed transition periods are 5 years for agriculture and horticulture. Nevertheless, the labeling of the materials and the labeling of the products which will be put on the market will be required much sooner than that. If you want to know more about the microplastic in seed enhancement, and if you want to stay up to date with all the discussions that are taking place in the seed industry as well as in the European Chemical Agency, please email us directly at general@incotec.com. So now let me go back to the microplastic. What is microplastic? And maybe also more importantly, what is not microplastic? Well, we might already have a solution. So please tell me right now, what is the solution to tackle the problem in microplastic seed treatment? Right, I see that a lot of people already know the good answer. So indeed, the answer number A, natural and biodegradable polymers are the solution. But let's start first with the definition, or the current definition that is proposed by European Chemical Agency. So what is microplastic? Microplastic is a material consisting of solid, polymer-containing particles. I'm stressing solid because that's really, really important part of this definition. Where more than 1% of the particles have all dimension between 1 nanometers and 5 millimeter. Please note that there are still discussion ongoing concerning the lower limit. Since 1 nanometer, it's not very easy to detect, or it's not very easy to see. Well, and maybe most importantly, what is not microplastic, but from the poll, I know that most of you already know. So the polymer that occurs in nature that has not been modified chemically, or the polymer that is biodegradable. Both are exempt at the moment and are not seen as microplastic. But how do you prove that? So you can ask, how do you prove that your polymer is biodegradable? Several methods has been proposed, and the tier approach has been proposed by ECHA, but still the final pass criteria are being discussed. But all tests that will need to be done in order to get the exemption from the microplastic regulation has to be done by the ISO certified labs. So now let's talk about the polymers that we use in the seed treatment. And please tell me which products will be affected when legislation is implemented. Yes, I see that most of you are right. So indeed, it's all of the above. So film coatings, encrusting, and paletting, and active ingredients. So where are we used polymers? So most of you have been right. The polymers are used in the various seed treatment products, plant protection products, when they are mainly used as a built-in polymer for the better adhesion and inflowable suspension, but also as for encapsulation as a release agent for some active ingredients that need the prolonged release, or they are not safe to handle, so that encapsulation is needed. Film coating liquids also can and do contain polymers, and certain vegetable pellets, especially the one that has been decided to be light and break off very quickly. Those materials contain polymers that could fall under the definition of microplastics. So, well, maybe a good question: why are we using polymers in the seed treatment, and are all polymers bad kind of polymers? So, well, that's important to remember that not all polymers are plastics, but on the flip side, all plastics are polymers. So why are these types of polymers used in the seed treatment? The reason is mainly safety. So we use the general public requires the seed treatment to be safe for the farmers and for the handlers, maximum efficiency with the minimum environmental impact. And that's why the polymers are being used. Also, the industry requires very low dust levels, since the polymer will protect the dust off from the seed, as well as the abrasion resistance. So it adds an extra security to the seeds when they are being transported or being planted. So we, in short, we add the polymers to make sure that what goes on the seed stays on the seed. So now, Rob, tell me about the criteria.
Yes, well, it goes without saying that we don't, in our industry, we don't want to jeopardize the benefit of seed treatment when alternative products will be developed. The foremost important thing to be considered when developing alternatives is seed safety. Any new product needs to be absolutely safe to the seed. Furthermore, it will be extremely important that there is excellent dust control. This is important to secure there is minimal exposure of the active ingredient to both the factory workers, the farmers, as well as the environment. Next, it's important that the film coat can be applied in the seed facility easily and without any clumping, and that seed flows properly through the farmer's planters. And last but not least, abrasion resistance is also important to keep the valuable active ingredient on the seed and not in the bottom of the seed bag. So what about the alternatives? Well, Incotec is working hard to develop alternatives for all products which might be affected by the upcoming legislation. The products that we are looking for are several. Regarding film coat liquids, there are many different crop PPP combinations, and the biggest challenge will be with oily crops where there are more complex slurries being used. Complex in this context often means much volume of seed treatment products and many different kinds of products. Some examples are maize, soybeans, sunflower, and various vegetables. There are also certain seed encrustments and seed pellets which have specific release characteristics, namely dissolving or fast melting, which may contain microplastics and will need to be replaced by alternative products. Incotec expects to be able to offer microplastic-free alternatives from 2020 onwards, and we should have a complete range available in 2021 or 2022. This should allow customers sufficient time to evaluate these alternatives so they can introduce these products well before the proposed time of the restriction. Of course, our definition of microplastic is based on the existing knowledge if at any time the definition were to change, we will adapt our products accordingly. Furthermore, it's good to mention that although legislation will be implemented first in Europe, there is likelihood that it's going to be adopted elsewhere. And regardless of the legislation, our commitment is to feed the growing population with no or minimal environmental impact in the most sustainable way. This means for us that we will strive to have alternatives available. So in the next slide, we will explain how the public can access the various alternatives. We can imagine that you're interested to be informed about the alternatives which Incotec is developing. There are several ways to make sure that you're up to date with our developments. One way to inform yourself is to access our website regularly. All our latest developments will be made public through our website. An alternative would be to mail Incotec to be updated proactively when new microplastic-free seed treatment products become available for a specific crop. You can simply contact us through our email address and you will be put on a mailing list to be informed when a specific product has been commercialized.
Last but not least, if you can contact us and you would be interested in participating in validation phase of our prototype products, since none of our products yet has been commercial, well, please contact us and we have developed a final prototype and we will finalize it together with you. And then we will choose several groups of customers that can participate in that product validation. Please, again, contact us to discuss the possibilities.
As we indicated before, it fits in our ambition that we promote the most sustainable practices to our customers. This will mean that we will also make microplastic-free alternatives available outside Europe, whereby the US and Latin America will be the first two regions which will have access to these alternatives, after which we will disseminate our products further around the globe. In order to live our ambition, meaning mission zero, sustainable to the max. That was on the last slide. To keep updates on the microplastics and seed enhancement, we've mentioned this specific email address before. You can subscribe to general@incotec.com, both for updates about our regular promotional products, as well as for customers which might be interested to participate in development of new alternatives. And I'll give it to you, Alex.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rob and Marta, for that lovely presentation. So we're going to enter now into a short Q&A session.
Manny has a question to Rob. Is there any requirements for rate of degradation in the soil for microplastic alternatives? Yes, so as I mentioned, there are at the moment requirements that have been cited by REACH or by ECHA. At the moment, the degradation in soil has to be 90% in reference to the cellulose. And that test has to be done for 24 months. And can be prolonged as well if required. But at the moment, this is the pass criteria for the degradation in soil.
We got a question here whether we focus on only microplastic-free polymers or also look at colorants as well. Currently, when looking at the legislation, we will produce film coat liquids that will be compatible with the existing definition of a microplastic-free products, which indeed will mean that also our colorants will not contain any microplastics. There's a question about the potato seed tubers, any seed treatment product availability, microplastic free. At the moment, not. We are looking at opportunities to treat tubers, not only seed, but also bulb, flower bulbs, etc. But new developments are on the way, and we expect to have those available within 1 or 2 years from now.
We have quite interesting question from Simon as well. Will bio-friendly polymers become like organics, where many claims are made without backing of trials? Well, let me just first say, well, we have to talk about the microplastic, not the bio-friendly. But I think, at least how I see how seriously ECHA is taking into account, and also the European Union, the microplastic as a threat to the environment, I don't think that will be an empty claim, because we will have to prove beyond all doubt that our polymers are biodegradable or that they are natural. So I don't think there is really a way to go around that.
There's a question from Doug about the lifespan for seed applied biodegradable polymers. And the question is, would it be, would the lifespan be, I'm assuming that's about biodegradability over 3 years. Well, indeed, depending on the definition and the way how to tackle the problem, our current shelf life of product is anywhere between 12 and 24 months. And obviously, we understand that our customers need a decent shelf life of these products, and we will make sure that this is enough for our customers to be used. And still, we're aiming at 24 months when it leaves our facility.
And then Dai is asking, are we using degradable synthetic polymers or biodegradable natural polymers? Well, I must say that in our development, we have been looking at the range of different polymers, so both synthetic and natural, and we are aiming to be sustainable to the max. So we want to be fully natural.
Okay, we've got a question from Clara, who's got a question how we will flag in our website if a specific product will be microplastic free or not. And indeed, when we will be developing new and launching new products, we will make sure that it's clearly indicated that when new products are microplastic free, that they will be labeled accordingly.
So Rodrigo is asking if there is any positive or negative list created. At the moment, there is no real document with the positive and the negative polymers available. So if you go in detail with the biodegradable criteria, you can find there's some positive and negative polymers. So as a positive, I can tell you that cellulose is the one that it seems as the best biodegradable polymer, and the negative, as an example, is a polystyrene.
I've got a question here from Bob asking about the legislation outside the European Union. The honest answer is we don't know exactly. We see and hear there's a lot of interest outside of the EU, in the US, in Latin America, but nothing has been started as of yet, although it sounds rather logical that there may be legislation coming our way as well in due time. There's a question from Julie about the ECHA report suggests an amount of microplastics of 0.01%. That should be in the product, and the exact percentage of microplastics in a seed treatment. It's a bit difficult to provide an answer there. There is a percentage. and it's based on the percentage of polymer in the seed, in the binder part of the polymer, and it quite frankly it ranges, but it's way over the 0.01% that's being mentioned here.
Then Jane is asking if the biodegradability testing done on the finished seed treatment formula or on the individual components. At the moment we are looking at both. So we are looking at the main polymer that it's in the film coating, but we also will be looking at the full formulation of the film coating. So it's the pure polymer that has to be proven to be biodegradable or natural for the legislation's sake.
This one's for you, Marta.
Yeah. So Stephen is asking, what data do you expect your raw material suppliers to provide in terms of biodegradability? That's a great question, Stephen. We would like to see at least biodegradability data to see that the polymer itself is not resistant to biodegradability. So as I mentioned, that the criteria pass-fail are not final yet. But I think if we have a good indication whether or not polymer is biodegradable, then we can already make a guess, and we can decide whether or not we want to use it in our trials. So Marisa is asking, are water-soluble polymers considered to be microplastics? So that's a very, very good question. There has been a lot of discussion within ECHA as well about the solubility, how to define it. So as of today, ECHA says that everything that is water soluble or soluble in the solvent that you are using, it's not considered to be a microplastic. So I assume that the polymer is one molecule. It's not considered as a microplastic. So then water soluble polymers will not be microplastics. Stacy is asking if a 24-month shelf life for treat seeds or bottle polymers. Right. So we are working to have both. So our reference is indeed the best in class film coatings that we have on the market. So with all our new developments, that's our minimum criteria. So we wanna be as good both in the shelf life of the bottle polymer as well as the treated seeds. So 4 months for both.
So the impact from Frank, he's asking what the impact would be of our of the microplastic-free alternatives on the equipment would be from the viewpoint of the machine manufacturers. Now, of course, we do understand that our customers have been investing heavily in treatment equipment, and we will try, and I think that will hold true for all manufacturers of film coat liquids. We will try and develop products which will be completely compatible with the existing equipment that's being used, whether those are rotary coaters or rotary dry coaters or whatever types of continuous treaters or any type of equipment that is currently common practice.
Julie is asking, so the ECHA report suggests an amount of microplastic 0.01%. What is the current percentage of microplastic in a seed treatment? Well, it all depends on the formulation, and also all depends on the slurry that the formulation is being used in. But yeah, it's hard to say, but probably it's a little bit higher than what ECHA is citing. So we have another question. Water-soluble polymer, when applied to seeds, will dry out and create microplastic. How does it make sense to exclude water-soluble polymers? Yes, that's true, but it will create a film. So it's not a particle, it's not a solid particle anymore. It's a free-floating molecule, if you want it. So therefore, it's not being seen as a microplastic because it's not a solid particle.
There's another question from Doug. You want to try it again, Marta?
Seems the shelf life on treated seeds needs to reach or exceed 4+ years based on corn seeds sitting in warehouses for that time. from what we do and how we work with most of our customers, we are looking at 2 years on seed stability. But obviously, if your seeds are being stored in the proper condition in the seed room, we expect that 4-year plus will not be a problem. So Richard is asking, what test method does the soil degradation align with? I don't know, Richard, if you could maybe expand a little bit your question, because I don't think I understand it completely. But indeed, the soil degradation test method, if that's what you're asking for, that's the ISO method at the moment, 17556. And that's, we follow that one. But I don't know if that was your question. So OECD. Yeah, so OECD, those are also the test methods that have been cited by REACH, but those are only applicable if the polymer is water soluble. So it's not always possible to have that OECD.
Well, thank you so much, Marta and Rob. That's actually all the time we have today. So I'd like to thank both Rob and Marta for joining us today and for Incotec for making this webinar possible. Just a reminder, if you'd like to keep in touch and updated on microplastics and seed enhancements, email general@incotec.com to subscribe to hear more about that. We'd also like to give a big thank you to everyone who participated. We hope that you found this information of value, and we hope we managed to answer all of your questions. But if there was a question we didn't get to today, we are going to send out a document to make sure those questions get answered. Just so you know, again, a recording of this webinar is going to be made available later this week at seedworld.com. Thanks again, and we hope you have a terrific day. This is Alex Martin of SeedWorld signing off.